The federal Green Party is calling it a new era in Canadian politics. In last night's by-election in Nanaimo, BC, its caucus doubled from 1 seat to 2. Green Party candidate Paul Manley will now join leader Elizabeth May in the House of Commons 8 years after her election. Here's how the results break down. Manley took 37% of the vote. The Conservatives followed with 25%. The NDP, which previously held this riding, it was Sheila Malcolmson, who was the MP there, came third with 23%. And the Liberals lagged behind with 11%. And here's how some party leaders and MPs reacted.
First of all, the Greens have actually historically been fairly strong in that area, and so it's not a surprise that they performed well. But I would say that by-elections historically are very different from national general elections, where in by-elections people aren't choosing who is going to be the government.
Didn't get the result we wanted, but it's clear that people in Nanaimo-Ladysmith had a protest vote. They were not happy with what this government, this Liberal government, has done with purchasing a pipeline, and they wanted to see some strong action on climate change.
Yesterday it was a clear signal. Again, Justin Trudeau flip-flop all the time on those environmental issues, and he paid a huge price, and he will pay a huge price in 6 months from now.
We've seen a lot of growth in support, and the question always gets asked, can you translate that to more seats federally? And now today the answer is clearly yes.
So what led to the Green victory, and can the party, as Elizabeth May points out, repeat the success in the upcoming federal election? Paul Manley is the Green Party's new MP-elect for Nanaimo-Ladysmith, and he joins me now from Nanaimo by FaceTime. Hi, Mr. Manley, great to see you. Congratulations on your win.
Thanks, Vashi.
Really appreciate your time today. I wanted to start off by something that the Green Party released after your win. In the statement, it said that this is the dawn of a new era of federal politics. Do you agree with that statement? And if so, what does it mean?
Well, I think so. I think it's a shot across the bow to the other parties that it's time to get serious about climate change. And it also shows to voters across Canada, and we've seen this actually in other jurisdictions like PEI and in Guelph and New Brunswick and BC, that when you vote for what you want, when you vote for a vision that you want, that it's not a wasted vote, that you actually can get what you want in a representative and in policies that you want for moving this country forward.
How does that impact your strategy and the party's strategy heading now so soon into the federal election?
Well, we're just going to work hard at getting our message out about what the Green Party stands for. I mean, people think we're a one-issue party, but we have 130 pages of policy that's available through Vision Green on the Green Party website. Yeah, just getting that message out that we have a broad range of policy to deal with a wide range of issues, and we are serious about climate change.
On that portion, on the climate change portion, obviously, you know, there's a huge political debate here in Ottawa and sort of on the federal scene around what role the federal government should play. Shouldn't there be a carbon tax? And if so, what is the right price for that price on carbon, or carbon tax, whatever you want to call it? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the carbon tax is it's a minimal thing, and it's a sideshow to be arguing over the price of carbon. What we need is for the federal government and the provincial governments to stop subsidizing the fossil fuel industry to the tune of billions of dollars, buying pipelines or approving, projects like fracking in the Northeast and giving 5 multinationals that call themselves LNG Canada massive tax breaks. We need to stop doing that, and we need to get serious about climate change and put money into transitioning. The government's subsidizing this industry, this fossil fuel industry, and telling consumers that we need to change our habits. We need to change our light bulbs and our shower heads. I saw the environment minister going through Canadian Tire. I changed my light bulbs a long time ago. Changing home energy retrofits by 2050, that's not a bold plan. I did my first home energy retrofit in 2004. I took a house built in 1910 and turned it into an Energy Star. I've done my part. I need the government to step up and take climate change seriously, and that's why I ran, and that's what I'm going to go to Ottawa to hammer away at. We need to deal with this issue properly.
What do you say to people who are employed by those sectors that you named? And I take your point, but like people in the oil patch in Alberta, people employed through LNG, for example, both directly and indirectly?
Those skills are transferable, and we're seeing in other economies that people with those skills are getting jobs in renewable energies. The United Arab Emirates has gone big on renewables, and not just on installing solar panels and wind, but into research and development. And what the energy minister there has said is that there's 3 times as many jobs, and they're all good paying jobs. And so, people that work in those industries, we're going to have fossil fuel industries for a while we transition. But those people have skills that can be utilized in the clean energy economy. And so we need to set priorities as government, and politicians need to have the political courage to make these changes. Otherwise, we're not going to get it done. And in a lot of places, the market is deciding.
You were obviously in this election, this by-election, able to convert your popular support into the actual seat. If you look back at some of the Green outcomes in past federal elections, there has been a struggle to do so. Obviously, things appear to have changed. And I'm wondering, though, what you would identify as the biggest challenges heading into the federal election for your party if you are to convert what we have seen as an uptick in popular support to actual, the efficiency of the vote.
Well, I think when Greens put forward good local candidates that are known in the community, they can win. And so that's, what we're doing in ridings across Canada, and we're building ground teams. So we've seen wins in Guelph, in PEI, New Brunswick, here in British Columbia, and the teams that are put together for those electoral races are gaining skills and abilities and getting the message out and building community. So we've really built community around our team here in Nanaimo-Ladysmith. In 2015, we had the closest 4-way race in Canada, and I tripled the Green Party support. But what we did was attracted a whole bunch of volunteers to our campaign. We had almost 400 volunteers in the 2015 campaign, and I'm sure as many in this campaign. There was so many people coming and going, towards the end. It was incredible. So it's about building community. It's about getting people together to work on these campaigns and using the skills to back candidates who are known in the community, who've already got a track record in the community as hard workers. And that's, what I have in this community. And I think that then Greens can win. We have a solid vision for where we need to go with this country.
All right, I'll leave it there. Congratulations again, Mr. Manley. Appreciate your time this afternoon.
Okay, thanks, Vashi.
Back in 2015, the Greens placed 4th in this riding. Now Ladysmith represents their 2nd seat in Parliament. Here's where things stand now in the House of Commons. The Liberals, of course, have the majority with 177 out of 338 total seats. The Conservatives hold 97 seats. The New Democrats have 41 and the Bloc 10. As we said, Elizabeth May of the Green Party will now have a seatmate. Meanwhile, People's Party of Canada leader Maxime Bernier is also the party's sole MP. Former NDP MP Aaron Weir affiliates with the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation. Plus, there are 7 independent MPs and 2 seats remain vacant. As we look ahead to the next election, what does this Green win tell us? Or could it be an isolated event? Does it represent a potential shift in Canada's political landscape? Joining us to discuss from Vancouver is the Executive Director of the Angus Reid Institute, Shachi Kurl. In studio, I'm joined by CBC polls analyst Eric Grenier and the CEO of Abacus Data, David Coletto. Hi, all 3 of you. Great to see you.
Hello, Vashi. Hey, guys.
Shachi, I'm going to start with you because I was just discussing with the guys here that I noted how Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau had identical reactions to this, which was this shows us that people are worried about climate change. Is that really all this win shows us?
It shows us a lot more than that. So they're right. A little bit, because people are worried about climate change. They are identifying climate change increasingly as a top issue, especially if you're a younger voter in this country. If you're under the age of 35, this is hands down the top issue for you today in Canada. Less so if you're an older voter. Big surprise. However, what this says is, yes, Canadians are increasingly worried about climate change, but also that they are looking at and to the Greens as the only party that really owns that file or has its hands clean on that file. And I mean, part of that owes to the fact that they've never held government before, so they haven't had a chance to disappoint anyone or let anybody down. But when you think about the Liberals, particularly on the climate change file, they are the ones trying to bring forward carbon pricing and really running into a hard time with a lot of premiers across Western Canada and other parts of the country as a result of it. They're trying to make the case that if you want a government that is pro-carbon pricing, is pro-climate change remediation or reduction, you've got to vote Liberal. But of course, there is this little thing called the pipeline, and there is this little thing like marine tanker traffic off the coast of British Columbia. And those are things, particularly in this province, but if you are a Green voter, that has really busted the brand among the Liberals. And now Elizabeth May is able to make the case that if you vote Green, it's not necessarily a wasted vote. It's actually a vote that could come to pass in terms of electing some politicians, either in your province or at the federal level.
David, your abacus for data had a lot of new data that came out today that looked at sort of popularity of all the parties as well as their leaders. When you saw the result last night, did it jive with what you were seeing in that data?
Yeah, it did. I mean, one of the most important numbers that we released today was the percentage of Canadians who would consider voting for the Green Party, and it's hit its highest level we've ever been tracking at 40%. So it's still below all the other major parties, but 4 out of 10 Canadians now say they are open to voting for the Green Party. Elizabeth May is now the only federal leader that has more people who like her than dislike her. And the Green Party, while we're not breaking through with huge numbers in the ballot question, are at 9% nationally, are 1 point behind the New Democrats in Quebec at 10%, and are doing quite well right across the country. So there seems to be, I think, at least in the numbers, evidence that the Greens are connecting, that people are paying maybe more attention. And I think last night's result will add fuel to that fire and that momentum that I think the Greens have really been building since the PEI election, since the New Brunswick election, and even the Ontario election when they won their first provincial MPP there. So this is all in a series that are giving people more reason to at least consider the Green Party. Eric, you've looked in the past in some of your analysis at the sort of inability of them to convert the popular support necessarily into seats all the time, and Elizabeth May even sort of acknowledged that off the top of the show. This is a by-election, not the federal election. Is there a sort of a note of caution in there?
Well, certainly I think that's the case, as it was a by-election where there wasn't going to be any larger repercussions, because we saw in the provincial by-election took place in Nanaimo earlier this year that the Greens actually did a lot worse than they had done in the previous provincial election, because there voters knew that voting out the NDP would potentially put the John Horgan's government at risk. So I think that there's that factor that will play in the federal election, because if the numbers don't get much better for the Liberals, I think we're going to hear the Prime Minister say things like, you can vote for the Greens if it might make you feel good, but it might end up electing Andrew Scheer as the Prime Minister, and then you won't get any of the progress you would like on climate change. So I think that will be the kind of strategy that they'll have to go unless their numbers start to improve. But that is a very cynical, it's more of a negative strategy, which also opens up an opportunity for the Greens, who have in some parts of the country, like in Atlantic Canada, emphasized that they do politics differently, that they're going for cooperation, collaboration. And so now Elizabeth May will be able to say, as has been mentioned, that you can actually vote for Greens and elect Greens, whereas in the past, that was a bit of it was a claim that wasn't backed up by any proof, because no one had been electing Greens anywhere other than Elizabeth May's own seat. And in 2015, the only other Green politician that had been elected was in New Brunswick. So now there's almost 24 Greens across the country. And you can imagine, to make a parallel to the 2011 election where Jack Layton pretty much came out of nowhere and formed the official opposition. I'm not suggesting Elizabeth May is anywhere near that level of support, but until a wave happens, we don't really know it's coming until it does. And that's where I think when you look at the data, it does suggest a path is starting to open up, where you have a large group of voters, majority of the country, who are seriously concerned about climate change. At the same time, there's a growing number who are disappointed with the behavior, the performance of the Prime Minister and what his government is doing. And so as this campaign seems to get more and more nasty, as the two main leaders go after each other and try to basically make each other so unacceptable to each other, to the rest of the country, that it leaves an opening for the veteran leader of the 4 or the 5, if you include Max Bernier, to say, hey guys, why don't you put down the swords and let's work together to solve the problem that we really should be focused on. And I do think Elizabeth May has that chance. They're not going to have as much money. They're not going to have as well-known candidates, but no one knew who half the NDP caucus was before they were elected that night in 2011.
Shachi, let's talk about the NDP. Who stands in this scenario if the Greens do outperform expectations at this juncture, I guess? Who stands to win, who stands to lose, and what's your read on the NDP right now?
Well, this isn't good news for the NDP. I take a slightly different view from Eric's in that I don't think this was just a matter of voters in Nanaimo-Ladysmith saying, well, this by-election doesn't mean very much. I think this was actually a repudiation of the political class in this country. And when we talk about the political class, we're talking about the traditional parties. We know through the disapproval numbers that we're seeing for Justin Trudeau that there is an absolutely visceral outrage among a lot of people, not just on the right of center, but on the left of center political spectrum, who are just furious with the Trudeau Liberals, with Justin Trudeau in particular. They have not been particularly enamored of what they see with Jagmeet Singh. On the other hand, here you've got Elizabeth May. She's been around for a dozen years. There is a comfort factor now and a familiarity factor that she is able to capitalize on in the same way that Ed Broadbent was able to do in '84 after having been leader of the NDP since the mid-'70s. He's now sort of they become familiar faces on the campaign trail, and particularly not necessarily threatening faces on the campaign trail. And Jack Layton, when he had that orange wave in 2011, was also somebody that people slowly got to know over time. So there is a repudiation of the political class that's not good news for either the NDP and Jagmeet Singh or Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. And there's also just a time now where Elizabeth May, it's a bit like Seinfeld. They've had enough time to build up their base or their audience. She's had time to build up her base and audience in a way that hasn't felt like there was all this pressure on her around making a mistake or putting a foot wrong. And we've seen her campaign very effectively over several elections because she didn't have that pressure on her. And that is something that Canadians warm up to. She's the only leader, as David's pointed out, that is seen to be more approved of than any of the other federal leaders on the political scene today right now. And that's significant. And it really, I think, shows that, of course, all things being equal, nobody's pulling out their snow globes and shaking them around and saying what this means exactly for October, but she has an opportunity. The big question is, can she capitalize on it?
Yeah, it's hard, Eric, to say what it means exactly, but does it? I sort of feel like things are just more unpredictable now. Like, is it getting harder to predict what voters will do in October?
Well, I think that is becoming a bit apparent over the last few elections, where we've had a few, not necessarily surprises on election day. Not to say that it's a question of the polls getting wrong and being unable to predict it, but where you see the campaign changes over that 4 or 5 week period, where things stand at the beginning is not where they end up. Right. One of the factors, though, for Elizabeth May, I don't think we should retrospectively give her a lot of credit for the progress that the Greens have made. I think that the provincial parties have actually boosted the brand pretty significantly in a way that we saw with the New Democrats in 2015. When Rachel Notley won that election in Alberta, suddenly Tom Mulcair started looking a lot better. He hadn't done anything to earn that, but he was benefiting from it. So I think Elizabeth May might be coasting a little bit on that. She's always had some decent personal approval ratings that suggest that Canadians have felt pretty good about her. But if you look at the track record over the last few elections, it's been vote share for the Greens dropping when they dropped to the lowest in 2015, whereas Jack Layton, over his 4 terms, he kept on making progress for the NDP. So for Elizabeth May, this is going to be an opportunity for her to take advantage of that space that's opening up. And whether she is able to actually deliver on it, I think that will be the big test, because as we saw with 2015, the NDP had that opportunity and they squandered it. So the Greens have that chance. It'll be up to Elizabeth May, and this will be her 4th campaign as leader, to actually take advantage and deliver on it and make some gains across the country and approach maybe that official party status that certainly she'd like.
Quick final word from you, David, as we look towards the election.
Well, I think we can't predict anything. It's pretty clear, but I think what's absolutely clear today, and I think all the polls, regardless of what the ballots are saying and how big the Conservative lead is. Yesterday's result in Nanaimo-Ladysmith, the impact of the SNC-Lavalin scandal, there's no doubt that the political landscape has been reset to where it was at the end of 2018.
It's crazy, just 4 months ago,
Which
5
means,
months ago.
How do we even predict where it's going to be 5 months from now? So it does show how fluid things are.
Shachi, last word?
Well, I think, again, that This now sets up a real dichotomy between the left of center, between the Singhs and the Trudeaus, saying a vote for the Greens is a wasted vote, it's a vote for Andrew Scheer, and Elizabeth May being able to say, actually, guys, guess what? Not necessarily. It could be a vote for the Greens. Let's see how saleable and how credible those arguments prove to be with voters who, again, came together in 2015 under the Liberal banner, under Justin Trudeau, in order to stop Stephen Harper. This time, they're very fractured. They're looking for alternatives. They're sort of bleeding all over the place. Let's see where they lock in and who they lock in behind. And hey, this is what makes it fun season for us.
No kidding. All right, thank you very much to all three of you. Thanks to Shachi Kurl, David Coletto, and Eric Grenier. Green Party leader Elizabeth May is celebrating her party's second elected member of Parliament today. Reinforcement in the form of Paul Manley is coming. How significant is the Green Party's win in the Nanaimo-Ladysmith by-election last night? It's time, of course, for the Power Panel. In Vancouver, former Conservative Cabinet Minister Stockwell Day. Tiffany Gooch of Enterprise and Insight Canada is in Toronto, and here with me in studio, political commentator and former NDP MP Françoise Boivin, and a former Green Party deputy leader and former Ottawa City Councillor David Chernyshenko, also author of Burning Souls, joins us. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. David, welcome to the Power Panel. I'm going to start off with you. What do you read into this win?
You know, all those years, I ran on 2 different occasions federally, and the number of people who said, I really wanted to vote Green. I almost voted for you. I thought you were the best candidate. You were the best at the debate. But it was always a but. And at a certain point, when people feel that you can win, there's this sudden sea change or shift. And I think that's certainly what happened here, where someone who had come forth relatively recently suddenly wins. And I think that's a sense that people across the country, not in every riding, but in many places across the country, are really feeling like it is time for something different. This back and forth between other parties on issues that really matter today, it's not working.
Stockwell, I'm going to go to you because you're in Vancouver, right? And that's one of the, when we talk about what areas might have some potential for this kind of thing to take hold, BC is obviously apparently ripe for that. Where do you think, if you were looking out 6 months from now towards the federal election, you'd be watching to see something other than the norm occur?
I think so. Let's face it, any day a party leader can say that in the blink of an eye they doubled the size of their caucus in Parliament is a good day. And so congrats to Elizabeth May and also to Mr. Manley, the candidate there. Bad day for the Liberals, I have to say. They came 4th. And a bad day for the NDP. This has traditionally been theirs for, going back about 50 years with a couple of minor exceptions. For instance, when the Canadian Alliance ran there in 2000, just had to get that in. But it's devastating for the other parties. Here's an interesting angle that I think is going to develop and may be problematic, however, for Elizabeth May, because Mr. Manley, who won there in 2015, he wanted to run for the NDP, and they disallowed him to show up as a candidate because of alleged anti-Israel bias. And so now he switches over and runs for the Green and gets elected. You put that together with Elizabeth May's position on supporting a resolution which would take away the charitable status of a major Canadian Jewish agency. Add to that what Andrew Scheer said today about supporting a move of the embassy to Jerusalem. So there's going to be some clear fault lines that are really showing up here. And that's going to develop into some interesting debate and also some interesting votes, but clearly a win for the Greens here.
Yeah, I want to follow up, Tiffany, with what Stockwell points out for the NDP, the Liberals, even to a certain degree the Conservatives. What does this mean? When you look at who might benefit, who won't, what would you take away from it? I mean, the Prime Minister and Jagmeet Singh both came out today and said, this isn't a bad thing, and I'm paraphrasing, but said basically this shows that people are serious and have serious concerns about climate change. Is that really all it shows?
Well, I think it definitely shows that. It shows that there's a value that those voters were standing up for, and I think that that's one that both of those parties would feel that they are good on and want to be able to show that there's a win in this for them. But I think the Liberals didn't necessarily expect to win this by-election, but I would say that the NDP may have, and I think that this day is a different day, I would say, for Jagmeet than for Justin Trudeau. His team was fully out in BC for the last while running his by-election, so I think there may have been an expectation that organizationally on the ground they could have been doing better. And then I think on the other side of this, the Greens usually would target very specific ridings during an election and have candidates everywhere. So I think there's going to need to be a bit of a conversation about which ones they're likely to target and the groundswell of support that they're seeing. I do think that there's momentum here that they'll be able to continue to grow on. Doubling of a caucus is a big deal, and congrats to Elizabeth May and Mr. Manley. And I think on this, Elizabeth has a lot of room to grow. She now isn't the only member to meet with stakeholders when they come onto the Hill. She's able to sort of grow her capacity for communications, and I think at this point, big win for the Greens. I think a bigger loss, I'd say, for the NDP, and was sort of interested between how the NDP and the Conservatives were going to do, but a party going from fourth place to first place is a big deal.
And I want to quantify that, Françoise, and get you to weigh in, because we have the numbers here. And it's a by-election, so it's a bit different. I think Jonathan Wilkinson, off the top of the show, said people might vote a bit differently if they don't think they're voting for who stays in power, who doesn't. Still, in 2015, between now and 2015 and this by-election, the NDP lost over 14,000 votes. The Liberals lost over 12,000 votes. The Conservatives lost over 6,000 votes. And the Greens gained more than 1,000 votes. What does this say about the NDP?
Well, it says, first of all, it says a lot of things about all the parties. And it was fascinating to see how it unfolded, because this morning, to just say that it is equating to the fact that people are into climate change, I think it's oversimplifying what happened last night. If it was just that, if we didn't live PEI not too long ago, if we didn't live New Brunswick not too long ago, if we didn't live Outremont not too long ago, where the Greens were showing pretty strongly already. So there's a mix, I think, for the result. There's a mix of, yes, Vancouver and that area being very pro-environment, climate change being one of their main topic, but at the same time, it's saying a loud message to the NDP that they might not be the party on the progressive side that could replace the Liberals. It's saying a lot about the government in waiting, which is supposed to be the Conservatives who are leading in the poll, that they lost so many votes. It's a shift. It's saying it speaks volume on the Liberals who, if they aspire to keep their government, need to keep a lot of seats in BC. So there's a lot of narrative there. At the same time, it should tell Elizabeth May that the job is not done. Right now was one riding. There'll be 338 riding up for grab at the next election. I think she should go read the book from Brian Topp, when he said what was the key for the NDP to move from a distant, oh, we like you, and, you know, we think, but, and all those buts that I heard also in 2008, but I don't think you can beat the Bloc, and we showed we could, but it takes almost a perfect storm. It takes a perfect situation. People are fed up. We hear it every day. So if the leaders want to put it on climate change, lucky them, but they're missing the point. So I think she'll have to be having her act together, her candidates act together, also make sure that she vets everybody and she doesn't get any surprise, because we'll take her more seriously at the next campaign and have some great candidates in very specific areas, not to form government, but maybe to be the balance of power.
David, do you think this is more complicated than just being about climate change?
Without question. That's certainly a front-of-mind issue right now. But what we're seeing, I believe, now is people, they are translating their values into their vote. For the longest time, we watched the polls. We would hear it out on the hustings. These things really matter to me. But the ballot question is going to be this. What we're seeing is that this million species loss, per year, figure that came out yesterday, and that very frightening report. We are seeing people really feeling like, how long can I put off that decision, and which party is best suited to tackle those issues? So the Green Party has never been just about the environment, but that's clearly the strength and the raison d'etre for forming in the first place. And I think what you're really seeing now is people saying, we gave every other party the benefit of a doubt, and they failed on this critical issue. And the issue has become critical. It's going to only be more so. So I'm willing now to put my vote with the party that I actually trust to understand these issues and to take them very seriously. And so that's why I think it is. It's bigger than climate change, and I think it's bigger than Nanaimo.
I have to take a commercial break, but really quickly, what do you think the biggest challenge heading into the next 6 months for the Greens will be then?
Organization will certainly be key. Identifying those ridings, it was always a challenge. You want to run in every riding. I think that's a laudable goal. That was something that I always believed in, but you also want to win seats. So identify what those are and try and put your strengths, your forces in place there.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video. Thanks for watching.